Alright, here's my little helper Alice, so if you see a baby foot or a baby hand, it would be her, my little helper. I'm going to teach you how to find absolute location of a place, what you can think of as latitude and longitude. First, though, let's talk about what absolute location means. And I would like you to write this definition in the front of your social studies notebook, so make sure you get that out. If you don't have your notebook, then you need to get a piece of paper, write it down on a piece of paper, and then insert it into your notebook with tape or a staple later. So absolute location is the exact spot on Earth where a place is located. It's right exactly here. It's not kind of here, it's exactly here. And so you're going to give coordinates using these latitude and longitude lines, like 30 north and 15 east, or 45 south and 30 west. And we'll talk about how to do those coordinates as we go through. I do need you to draw some things in your notebook. It doesn't need to take up the whole page, but it needs to be large enough that you can write some things on the circle. So start by drawing a circle. This is going to represent the Earth. And of course, just pause the video at any point if you need more time to do this stuff. And I would like you to draw a line through the circle, through the very middle. And this line is going to be a latitude line. Lat is flat, so it needs to be a horizontal line that runs through the center of the Earth. Can you tell me what you call that line that we drew? What is the name of that latitude line that we drew? That is called the equator, and we'll come back to him. So the latitude lines are going to be flat horizontal lines. They are invisible. You're not going to see latitude lines as you walk down the street. They are used on maps. And another name for latitude lines are parallels because they never touch. But I will probably use the word latitude lines. You can use the word parallels if you want. And just to make things simple, we're always going to do latitude first. All right, so here we have that equator, which is the latitude line in the center of our Earth. Now, each one of these latitude lines, including the equator, is going to have a number. Think about what you think the number might be for the equator. And the number is 0. It's at 0 degrees. That little bitty circle there by my 0 is a degree sign. I won't require you to write degree signs because sometimes kids make them really big and I think that they're zeros instead. So it's okay if you just write 0. So go ahead and write equator, write a 0 by that, and go ahead and put on some latitude lines on your circle as well. So make your picture look like my picture. Again, pause if you need to. All right, so we have our latitude lines that are above the equator and the latitude lines below the equator. There are more latitude lines than what are drawn on this picture, but we're just going to keep it really simple to help you learn it. Now, I want you to think about your hemispheres. We are only going to be concerned about 2 hemispheres right now when we deal with latitude. I want you to think about what hemisphere is above the equator. And hopefully you came up with the northern hemisphere. So every number that is written by a latitude line that is above the equator will have an N. And you can see here that I wrote capitalized N's by those numbers that are above the equator. Now notice too, I said latitude lines. You cannot write N's by longitude lines. N's only work for latitude lines. So here I have 20 degrees north and 60 degrees north. You can see that my 20 degrees north is 20 degrees north here, and it's 20 degrees north here. That's because same line, same name. If you find that you're giving one name to a line here and a different name to the line over here, then you have things mixed up. So if this is 60 degrees north here for this latitude line, then it has to be 60 degrees north for this latitude line. If this is 0 degrees, then it's going to be 0 degrees here. Now you may notice that the equator doesn't have a letter, and that's because the equator is just 0. It's not north of itself and it's not south of itself. It is just 0. And there'll only be 2 numbers on the whole map that we're going to be making here that will be just 0. All right, so this is 20 degrees north, meaning it is 20 degrees above the equator. This is 60 degrees north. That means if we go 6 degrees north of this equator, we reach this area. Now you still cannot find the absolute location without the longitude lines, but this at least gets us the first part. Now I want you to think about what letter you might put by the numbers down here below the equator. So what letters would go by the latitude lines below the equator? Notice I said latitude lines. Notice I said below the equator. So you can see here I put my 20 and my 60 on, and it should be 20 south and 60 south because these are latitude lines below the equator. So this 20 south is 20 degrees south or below the equator. The 60 degrees south is 60 degrees south because it is a latitude line below the equator. Only latitude lines can have an S by them for south. That's it. Any longitude lines down here would have a different letter. Also keep in mind that if it's 20 degrees south on this side of the map, then it's 20 degrees south on this side of the map. Same line, same name. If it's 60 degrees south here on this side of the map, then it's 60 degrees south on this side of the map. Same line, same name. Okay? So just a quick review. We have latitude lines. Latitude lines go horizontally. You can remember the phrase lat is flat. The equator is in the middle, and it is marked with a 0 degrees because it's not above itself and it's not below itself. All latitude lines above the equator in the northern hemisphere are marked with a capital N. All latitude lines below the equator are marked with a capital S because they are in the southern hemisphere. Only latitude lines can have N's and S's by them. So latitude lines will only have an N or an S after the numbers because they are going to be latitude lines either in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. Make sure you're getting this all in your notes. We are going to try this out. We are going to start with latitude first, but we need to actually flip to the World Atlas to do that in the back of our book. Go to R8 and R9, and if you have a sticky note, I would like you to stick a sticky note on this. If you need one, raise your hand and just kind of stick it on the side or up here and make it so it kind of sticks out so you can easily turn to R8, R9 because we are going to be using these pages a lot. Now, before we get to going into latitude examples, I do want to talk about your map and how it looks. Okay, so this map has some special things about it. First off, you can see that if you have like the equator here, it's marked with a 0, and we go this way, it will eventually get interrupted by these countries. You will be just fine. Just know the equator does go through those countries. Okay. Also know that you can use either this equator here on R8, or you can actually go to R9, and if we go over, here's the equator here. you can use that one. It's the same exact line. It does not matter if you go on R8 or R9. That is the same exact line. You can pick which side of the book you want to go with. I usually pick whatever line's closest to the country or body of water that I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so if I'm trying to figure something out from like maybe Australia, I'd probably use the one on R9. And if I were trying to figure something out about, say, Canada, I'd use the one on R8. So you can do what you want though. Just be careful not to get your finger off of the line. Okay. Now your book, unlike the previous book we had, does give you all the letters by the numbers, so that should make your life easier. Do keep in mind that we are going to be doing country names or big bodies of water names. So like if I ask you a question and make sure that you are looking at, say, the country. So this is like Brazil here, not at the word South America, which is the continent, or at like Rio de Janeiro, which is the city. Okay? Remember that cities have capitalized letters, but little letters that follow them, and they're not bold. When we do latitude and longitude, I'm not going to be very interested in cities. Countries will be all capped. They'll be bold, but they will not be as large or as bold as the continent name. And so I usually am doing things with countries. I could be doing things with bodies of water, like major seas or oceans. Here's the Atlantic Ocean here. Oceans are all capitalized, and they are in blue on page R8, R9. You also will have some zoomed in maps here, on these two pages. Central America, since these countries are little, they have zoomed in, and they gave you this box here where you can see the countries and the latitude and longitude lines a little easier. They've done the same thing for Europe, which has a lot of tiny countries. Right over here is Europe. If you come down to the bottom of R9, you can see them a lot easier. And the latitude and longitude lines are still on that too. Alright, let's give this a try. So I'm going to give you some hints to help you out in case you don't know where these countries are. Or bodies of water. I might do bodies of water. Let's start off with the good old United States. It is in North America, and it is green in this book. See if you can figure out what latitude line goes through it. I'll need the number, and I'll need the letter. Pause the video, figure it out. Hopefully you've paused the video and you figured this out. So here's how you do this. You find the United States, and I am going to want continental United States. Just pretend like that's a given unless I tell you otherwise. Continental U.S. includes the 48 states, but does not include number 49 and 50 of Alaska and Hawaii. Now, once I find continental U.S., sometimes called mainland U.S., I look over here at this latitude line that's going through it, and I see that it's 40 north. Now, if I wanted to use the latitude line that says 40 north on page R9, that's fine as well. So some of you may have started over here on page R9, and then you may have very carefully moved your finger over here and saw that it went through the United States. And you would have got 40 north there because it is the same exact line. Same line, same name. So what that means is that the United States is 40 degrees north of the equator. So here's the equator. It is 40 degrees north of the equator. If I were on a boat and I started at the equator and I went 40 degrees north, I would hit the United States. Okay? Maybe I'd have to go through boat and car. But you get what I'm saying. Okay? that's what it's trying to say. Now you don't have absolute location quite yet. You have to actually put latitude and longitude together to get absolute location. But this gets you the first part. Let's try another one. Let's see. Let's do an island. It belongs to Africa. It is green, and it is called Madagascar. What is the latitude line that runs through it? Alright, hopefully you paused the video and you tried to figure that out. Here is Madagascar. Okay, and if I put my finger on the latitude line and go over here, I see it says 20S, so hopefully you got 20 south. Maybe instead of going that way, maybe you went this way. That is totally fine. Same line, same name. And there it is, 20 south. So either way. And that means that Madagascar, there's the equator, is 20 degrees south of the equator. Okay? It is at 20 degrees south because it is a latitude line below the equator. It is in the southern hemisphere. Do remember that latitude lines can only have one of two different letters. Think about what those letters are. Hopefully you got N or S because they're either in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. Okay, don't even worry about the longitude lines. Alright, let's do another one. Let's see here. Let's do which latitude line goes through Oman. Oman has a purple color. It is in the Middle East, and it touches Saudi Arabia. Pause and find it. Hopefully you did pause and find it. Here's Oman. Okay, so if I put my finger on Oman and I go over here, I see that it is 20 north. Again, it doesn't matter if I go on this side or if I come over here and do this side. Either way, you're going to get 20 north because it's same line, same name. And that means it is 20 degrees north of that equator. So here's the equator. If I go 20 degrees north, I'm going to run into Oman. Okay? So that is the first step for getting absolute location. If you have any questions about how to find out the number and the letter, in other words, the coordinate, for a latitude line, please let me know now. This is definitely something you need to get help on before we continue on with longitude. So if you don't know latitude, longitude is going to get super confusing. Okay, let's move on to longitude lines. Longitude lines are those long lines. You can hear the word long inside of the word longitude. They are also called meridians, and I'll explain that. I know meridians is kind of a different word. And we're always going to do longitude second. We will do latitude first, and we'll do longitude second. And that's why I'm teaching you latitude first and longitude second. Go ahead and draw another circle, a brand new one. And down the center of your circle, draw a longitude line. That's a vertical line, so up and down. And this longitude line has a special name. See if you can think about it. Maybe you've never heard it before. Let's see. It's called the prime meridian. Now, this name doesn't really make sense at first, but really if you break down the name, it starts to. So, prime means first. Like if you think of Optimus Prime from Transformers, the leader, the guy in charge, he's Optimus Prime. If you think of primary school, that's your first years in school. Primary colors are like the first colors, and you mix them with other colors to get secondary colors. So prime means first. Meridian, remember meridian is just another name for a longitude line. So this is the first longitude line. That's what prime meridian means. And it is down the center of the world vertically, okay? Because you can cut this circle in half 2 different ways. So if you're wondering about where the prime meridian lies and where to find it, it is going to cut through the United Kingdom. So right here, this red part. Here's the United States. Here we went past the Atlantic Ocean, and here is the United Kingdom over there in Europe. Okay, it's an island. And the reason that it's there is because the people who made this up in Greenwich, England, wanted to put it there. They thought, hey, we made up this system of latitude and longitude, let's put it where we're at. And so if you go and visit today, you can actually go and see the marker for the prime meridian. Okay, the prime meridian is marked with a 0 as well. And you can tell it apart from the equator because the equator is going horizontally, whereas the prime meridian is going vertically. But they are both marked with just a 0. They will have no letters by them. Let's go ahead and put 20W and 60W on our map. Don't forget to draw your longitude lines with them. And yes, there are more longitude lines on your actual map. Do be careful because on a lot of maps, the longitude lines will be curved, and that's just because they're taking into account the curvature of the Earth, whereas these lines here on my map are just straight up and down. But when the more curve you have, the more likely it is that your finger will get off the line, and then you'll accidentally go to the wrong number. So be very careful when you run your finger up and down the line to make sure you get the right number. All right. You'll notice that these are marked with a capital W, and that is because these longitude lines are on the west side of the prime meridian. So they're each going to have a W next to the numbers. So if we look at the prime meridian, this first line, 20W, is 20 degrees west of the prime meridian. It's a longitude line 20 degrees west of the prime meridian. This is 60 degrees west of the prime meridian. So if I were to travel 60 degrees west of the prime meridian, I'd be in this area. Now that's not absolute location yet because you have to have both latitude and longitude lines to get absolute location. But this gets you partway there. So this is the west because it's in the western hemisphere, and that's why we're going to mark them all with W's. Think about what you think the other longitude lines should be marked with. What letter? And of course, pause the video if you need to think. So these longitude lines would have E's by them because they are longitude lines in the eastern hemisphere. And so when you see the 20 and the 60, you had to think, okay, are these longitude line numbers, are they west of the prime meridian or are they east of the prime meridian? And the answer to that is that they are on the east side of the prime meridian. They're in the eastern hemisphere. So this longitude line is 20 degrees east of the prime meridian. So if you go 20 degrees east this way, you'll hit this longitude line. If you go 60 degrees east this way, you'll hit this longitude line. Do keep in mind that if you get a different letter up here than you do down here, then you're doing something wrong. If this is 20 degrees east here, this has to be 20 degrees east here. You know, same line, same name. Same thing over here. This is 60 degrees east up here. This has to be 60 degrees east down here. Again, same line, same name. You can't get one letter here and a different letter down at the bottom. Okay? Longitude lines will only be marked with W's and E's. And that's because the prime meridian only divides the world into the western and eastern hemisphere. You do not worry about latitude lines when you're doing W's and E's. You pretend like they don't exist. Now, longitude lines will only have W's and E's after the number. One thing you might think about if you get the W and E mixed up, let's say you've kind of flip-flop the two, is that it does spell we. So if you look here, W E spells we. All right, we are on R8, R9 in our World Atlas in the back of our textbook. And I want to talk about longitude. Keep in mind, longitude is going to be the second thing that you do. And there are going to be some oddities here that we need to talk about. And one is that this Robinson projection map is going to have these curved longitude lines. And these are to show the curvature of the Earth, since the Earth is not flat. No matter what the YouTuber says, the Earth is not flat. Okay? So it's got this curved line to show the curvature of the Earth. Be careful, because I've seen students, they're going up to their number and then they start going this way. Okay? So be careful with that. Alright? Now, on a lot of maps, it will have your longitude lines written at the bottom, and it will have it written at the top. However, this map has it only written at the bottom. But be aware that you could have the numbers written at the top, and those would be fine to use because same line, same name. Okay. You can also use these zoomed in maps here. Down here we have Central America. That is a zoomed in picture of this right here because those countries are pretty little. And the latitude and longitude lines are given here. And that's on R8. And on R9 we have Europe. And Europe is right here. And Europe has a lot of little countries. Now, usually on these world maps I find that how the world is set up, usually the prime meridian ends up being the crease of the book. Now you can't write anything in the crease of the book. So what they've done is they just left out the word prime meridian, and they left out the 0, and they left out the line completely. So one good way to get your bearing is to think about where the United Kingdom is. Keep in mind that the people that invented latitude and longitude coordinates were living in England, and they decided to put the prime meridian there. And so England is in the United Kingdom right here, this red island, and that is where the prime meridian runs. So if you have a good mental map in your head, you should be able to visualize where England is in relation to other countries, and this will help you understand if you are in the Western or Eastern Hemisphere. Because remember, longitude only cares about the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, because the prime meridian only divides the world into the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere. We do not care about latitude lines right now, which means we do not care about the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. We do not care about N's and S's. We only care about W's and E's for the longitude lines. Okay? So, let's try some of these out just for longitude. So we're part way to figuring out absolute location, but not all the way there. Okay, let's do which longitude line goes with the country of India. And India is like an orange color, and it's in Asia. Another good hint is it's by the Indian Ocean. It touches it. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video. This is India. And so we're looking for the longitude line, the vertical line. And so we know in this book they only gave the numbers on the one end, unfortunately. And when we go down this way, we can see, oh, the number got chopped off by Antarctica. That is a bummer. Okay, so since that happened, you need to know what they're counting by. Okay, so here's the prime meridian. It's a 0. So let's see. 0, 20, 40. What do you think this one's going to be? Hopefully you realize you're counting by 20s. 60, 80. Okay, so this must be 80 degrees east. 80 east. And that is because this is a longitude line east of the prime meridian. Okay, so keep in mind that when we say that, what we're saying is if we start at the prime meridian, this line right here, and we go this way, when we get to 80 degrees east of this line, we've run into India. Okay? Another thing I want to show you is when you are closer to the prime meridian, the numbers are smaller. Like, see, this is a 20 west, this is a 20 east. Okay, then you get a little bigger. 40 west, 40 east. Okay? So the closer you are to the prime meridian, the smaller the numbers. It works the same way for the equator as well. If I go over here to R8, here's the equator, 20 north, it's going to get a little bit bigger, 40 north, a little bigger, and we're going to be to 60 north. Still counting by 20s here. If I go the other way and go south, 0 for the equator, 20 south, we're counting by 20, so the next one should be 40 south. Counting by 20, so the next one should be 60 south. So the closer you are to the equator, the prime meridian, the closer to 0 you are. The further away you are from the equator and prime meridian, the larger the numbers get. Okay? A lot of books would actually have all those numbers written for you, and they would have the longitude lines written at the bottom and the top. So that is something that's different about this textbook. Alright, we are going to try another one. Let's do Iceland. Okay, Iceland is a yellow island. See if you can find Iceland. Alright. While you are looking for that, I do want you to know that we are not going to worry about these little dotted lines. So you can see the Tropic of Cancer here. We'll talk about what the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn are, but don't worry about those. Pretend like they don't exist right now. Alright, so here is Iceland, right up here off the coast of Greenland. And so we're doing longitude, so the vertical line. So we're going down, because unfortunately it doesn't give us the numbers up top. That would be easy. And that gives us 20 degrees west. Okay? That means that Iceland is 20 degrees west of the prime meridian. It is a longitude line west of the prime meridian. That's why it's marked with a W. So if this is the prime meridian, if I go 20 degrees west, I run into Iceland. Okay? Alright. Let's do one more. And then if you find yourself struggling with longitude, please ask, because after a bit we're going to put this together and get absolute location. We'll have it. Alright, and the next one that I would like to do, this is going to be which longitude line runs through Spain. Spain is yellow, and it is in Europe. Now, since it's in Europe, remember you have the zoomed in map down here. Okay. All right. So let's zoom in here to Spain. Here is Spain, and we're looking for the longitude line that's going through it. So what we got to do is we got to find Spain. Now it looks like these longitude lines are written at the top, and this is at 0 degrees. So since that's the prime meridian, you just say 0 degrees. You don't put any letter after it. It'd just be 0. And it is okay if you don't write a degree sign, because sometimes those degree signs do look like zeros and it gets a little confusing. So you could just write a 0 down for Spain. Alright, we probably ought to do actually a body of water and just see how you would do with a body of water. Okay, so let's say I am looking for the longitude line that runs through the Black Sea. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to actually flip it over to this map over here on R6 and R7. So I'm R6, and here we are at R7. The Black Sea is right north of the country of Turkey. So you're going to have to kind of flip back and forth between the two maps, okay, to make it work. So I'll give you a chance to do it, and then if you're struggling, I'll show you how. What longitude line runs through the Black Sea? And you will have to use a political map and definitely a physical map, because the Black Sea is a physical feature of the earth. It's made by nature. Alright, hopefully you figured that out. If not, I'll walk you through it. So here is Turkey. Okay. I did tell you it was north of Turkey, so you could have got it that way. Or you could have found Turkey, and you could have noticed that it had a unique shape, and it was in Asia, not too far from Africa. And so this would be Turkey, and right above it's the Black Sea. Now, it wouldn't have mattered if you'd used this longitude line on this page, or if you came back here and found the Black Sea on the political map. Whichever way is fine. Okay. So here is then the Black Sea. It's not labeled, unfortunately. And whenever you go down, so if I go down here, I can see that it's at 40 degrees east. Okay? Meaning that if I start on the prime meridian and I go 40 degrees east, I'm going to run into the Black Sea. Alright. Please let me know if you have any questions. When you think about latitude and longitude, think about grids that you have in math. And so think about them as grids on a map. And you'll want to end up doing the x-axis first, just like in math. So think of an x-axis as any horizontal line running across your map, because lat is flat. So again, the horizontal lines, that's the x-axis. And then think about the y-axis as being the longitude lines or the vertical lines on a graph or on your map. And so they're the vertical lines. So if you're good at math, you might make this connection. And so here is a map, and you can see that you are going to do your latitude lines first. Okay. That's Alice in the background. And then you're going to do your longitude lines second. So maybe that will help you with reading latitude and longitude lines when you do absolute location. All right, we are ready to put latitude and longitude together. We are always going to start with latitude, and then we're going to do longitude. Okay, and these will be put into coordinates. So in a moment, we're going to do some examples. You'll need to be on R8, R9 to do these examples. Do keep in mind that the vertical lines, the longitude lines, do count by 20s on here, because there are a few longitude lines that are not labeled. And it would be your job to know if it should be marked with a W or E if it's not labeled. Okay? Alright, so let's first start with Bolivia. Okay, write that down in your notebook there in the front in your notes section. Bolivia, some hints for you if you don't know where it's at, is in South America, and it is a purple color in this textbook. Pause if you need to have more time to find Bolivia. Alright, so Bolivia is in South America. It is right here. Now, I want you to pause and see if you can figure out the coordinates, the latitude and longitude lines that go along with Bolivia. It is where they would intersect or cross at. Alright, so here's Bolivia. Let's start with our latitude line or horizontal line. Remember, lat is flat. And it doesn't matter if I go on the line this way or if I go on the latitude line this way. I'm going to go this way because it's closest to my country. And if I go over this way carefully without getting off the line, I can see that is a 20S, meaning 20 south. So Bolivia is 20 degrees south of the equator. Now I need to do my longitude line. Back to Bolivia. I kind of guess where that longitude line is going to be crossing that latitude line. Now I could go up, but in this book they only give me the longitude labels at the bottom, so I have to go down no matter. So I go down, and as I go down, I see the number 60, and it's marked with a W, which means it is 60 degrees west of the prime meridian. So my answer that I'm going to write down is going to be 20 degrees south, 60 degrees west. Sorry if it's kind of shaky, I've got to switch my hands to write. So here's how you would write that. 20S, comma, 60W. Please make sure you capitalize the letters. You do not have to put the degree sign because it does look like zeros, so don't worry about it. If you do a degree sign, please make them tiny. Okay, make sure you ask if you have any questions. Let's try Japan. Japan is located in Asia. It is red, and it's a series of islands. Archipelago, if you will, a series of islands. Pause and find Japan now. Alright, hopefully you found Japan. Japan is right here off of the country of China and South Korea. And here we have Japan. We got to find where the latitude and longitude lines intersect or cross. Alright, let's start with latitude because we always start with it first. And so if I go over here at Japan and I go over, it is at 40 degrees north. Okay, I could have went the other way too, that's fine. But I mean, Japan is so close to this side over here on R9, so it makes sense to go over here. That just means I'll have fewer mistakes with getting my finger off the line because I don't have to travel so far or go over the crease of the book. So I'm going to write down 40 degrees north and then a comma. Then I'm going to do that longitude line. So I'm going to start here. I would love to go up, but it's not labeled. So we have to be careful because this is a curved line. And we go down here. Okay, sorry my fingers and my camera aren't matching up. Alright, and that is going to be 140 degrees east. So Japan is 40 degrees north of the equator and 140 degrees east of the prime meridian. And then we are going to write that down. And that is how it's going to look when you write down Japan's coordinates. Make sure you capitalize the N and the E. Please make sure you put the latitude line first. So it should be 40 north first and then 140 east second. We're always going to start with the latitude lines. Alright, the next one that we are going to do is Poland. And we're going to find the absolute location for Poland, starting with our latitude line, then doing our longitude line, making coordinates like we just did up here. Okay, so Poland, it is in Europe, and it is green. See if you can find it. Pause the video if you need to. Alright, so I would come down here to the Europe map down here on R9, and Poland is right there by Germany. And we need to find first the latitude line. So if you didn't do this, you need to pause and do it. If you go over here, it says 50 north. Then you need to find your longitude line. Okay, this would be where it intersects or crosses. And if you go up here, it says 20 east. So it's at 50 north and 20 east. That means that Poland is, here's my equator. It is 50 degrees north of the equator and it is 20 degrees east of the prime meridian. Now, if you think you're getting the hang of this, then go on ahead and try to find the countries or major bodies of water that these coordinates are at. If you think you need some help getting started, then let's go ahead and do some of these together. And you can just pause the video when you're ready to try it yourself. So, 40 degrees north, 100 east. So we're going to go onto our map on R8, R9. Now I want you to think about 40 degrees north. What kind of line would that be? A latitude line or a longitude line? Hopefully you thought latitude line. It could be latitude line because it came first, and I told you we're always going to start with latitude first, or because it has an N, and you know that latitude lines only have N's or S's by them. Either one of those reasons is a good reason for why you might think it's latitude. Now, think about what line of latitude you're going to start with. Hopefully you thought of the equator. Now, it doesn't matter if you go on page R8 or R9. I'm going to come over here to R8 and zoom into the equator. Alright, now think about if you are going to go up or down. Hopefully you thought up because this is an N for northern hemisphere. So we want to go towards the northern hemisphere, not to the southern hemisphere. Remember that the equator divides the world into two hemispheres, the northern and the southern hemisphere. So we have to make sure that we are going up. So we have the equator here. Let's go up to the latitude line that says 40 degrees north. There it is. And you could have done the same thing on R9. Doesn't matter which side. Alright, the next part is 100 degrees east. Okay. So I want you to think about if that is going to be a latitude line or a longitude line. Hopefully you came up with a longitude line. Think about which line of longitude we are going to compare it to. What are we going to start with longitude? Hopefully you came up with the prime meridian. Again, feel free to pause this anytime you think I'm going too quick. So, you now need to think about if you're going to go on this side or this side of your book for 100 degrees east. You want to go on this side of the book because you are going into the eastern hemisphere. So here's our prime meridian. The eastern hemisphere is over here. Okay, and we're wanting 100 degrees east. Here we're at 0, 20 degrees east, 40 degrees east. Way over here is 100 degrees east. Alright, now we are going to very carefully bring our fingers together. Do not get off of the lines when you do this. Okay? Now you are going to start with the latitude line. The latitude line is 40 degrees north. Okay? I might go over here and hop over here to this 40 because I know I'm going to be on this side of the book because we have an eastern hemisphere thing. So we have 40 degrees north. Go over very carefully till you think you get close to 100 degrees east. Just be very careful as you go through. Okay? I would use 2 fingers if I had an extra hand, but the other hand has the video camera. Okay, here's 100 degrees east. I'm going to travel up here as carefully as I can, staying on the line. I'm going to move this finger over just a little bit. Unfortunately, these lines go behind the countries, so you have to be very careful. But you should still get the same answer. And my answer is that yellow country called China. Remember that countries have all capitalized letters, and they're bold, but not as bold as the continents. Don't give me the cities or any river names. Remember, cities have little letters following the first capitalized letter. And rivers, well, I don't think you have any rivers on this map that I'm seeing, but generally they would be written in blue. Okay? So your answer should be China, and you're going to write China down. You should be putting this in the front of your notebook, in your notes section, so you can practice doing latitude and longitude. It's one of those things that if you don't practice it, you know, it's pretty hard to catch on. So, capital C, it's a proper noun. And you should be able to write the name properly by copying out of the book. You shouldn't have these misspelled. Make sure you capitalize proper nouns, by the way. Alright, there's your first one. Now if you think you've kind of caught on, try doing the second one by yourself and just pause the video. If you think you need help doing another one, then we'll do the next one. Alright, so this one is 0 and 60 west. So think about what 0 is going to be. Is that going to be a latitude line or a longitude line? Hopefully you came up with latitude line. It is, in fact, going to be the equator, because that is a latitude line and the only latitude line with a 0, and it's the only latitude line that doesn't have a letter by it. So we got to find the equator. Doesn't matter if you go on R8 or R9. Here's the equator. By the way, the book doesn't have to have the word equator written down. It does in this book. It doesn't have to, but it does in this book. It's kind of helpful. Okay, so we found that. We don't have to go up or down because it's just the equator. And then we have 60 west. Think about which line of longitude we're going to compare 60 west to. Hopefully you came up with the prime meridian. Think about if we're going to be on this side or this side of the prime meridian. Hopefully you came up with the west side, which is this side. This is the western hemisphere. Alright, now we're looking for 60 degrees west. So we want to go 60 degrees west of the prime meridian. So here's 0. We got 20 and 40, and here's 60. Right, now we're ready to move them together. Again, I would use 2 fingers if I were a student, but I have to hold the video camera. So we have our equator here. Just going to kind of gently run my finger along. Okay, I'm going to gently bring this finger up and kind of inch them together. Make sure you stay on the line, okay? If you get off the line, then come back here and get it fixed. Alright? And bring them together where they meet or intersect. And this is going to intersect in this yellow country. And the yellow country is not called South America. Think about what it's called. It is called Brazil. And that's because it's all caps. Bold, but not too bold. Big, but not too big. Continent, country, city. We want the country, Brazil. So the country that is at 0 and 60 west is Brazil. And that is what we'd write with a capital B. Okay. Alright. Next one. 20 north and 40 east. If you think you can do this one by yourself, please do. At the end of this, if you feel like you don't get it, please let me know. But hopefully doing just a few practice ones has helped you understand this concept. Okay, so let's see if you can get this by yourself. Pause it, figure it out. Okay, hopefully you tried to figure it out by yourself. Let's go through this. So 20 north. Think about if that's going to be a latitude or a longitude line. It should be a latitude line because we always do latitude first, and only latitude lines can have N's or S's. Alright, think about what line you're going to compare that to. Hopefully you said the equator. Equator is right over here. We could also use the equator on page R9. Doesn't matter which one you use. Okay, I'll just use the one on R9 this time just to be different. Okay, now you need to think about if we're going to go up or down for 20 north. Hopefully you said up because north, it means northern hemisphere, and the northern hemisphere is above the equator. So here's 0, and here's 20 north. Okay, 20 in. Now our next part of this is going to be 45E or 40 east. Okay, so think about what line we need to look at to compare 40 east. Hopefully you said the longitude line called the prime meridian. Now think about if we're going to go this side of the prime meridian or this side of the prime meridian. Okay, we're going into the eastern hemisphere, which is over here. Okay, so here's the 0 or the prime meridian. Now we're going to the longitude line called 40 east. So we're going to go 40 degrees east of the prime meridian. So 20, 40. Alright, now that we found 40 east, now we have to bring our fingers together very carefully to where they intersect or cross. So again, a good idea to use 2 fingers for this. I can't because I have the video camera. Okay, so we had 20 north. So here's our 20 north. Bringing my finger over. Okay. Until I think I'm really close to where I need to be. Probably getting pretty close. Here is 40 east. Okay, don't get off that longitude line. Okay, I didn't bring my latitude finger over far enough, so I need to bring it over a little bit more. And then I need to bring my longitude finger up a little bit more. It's in the blue. And the blue, oh, it's not labeled. Think about what you're going to do next then, since that body of water is not labeled. Because I'm not going to give a country if I'm in the water. Hopefully you came up with the physical map, because physical maps show you bodies of water and other things made by nature. But this is a political map which shows you things made by man, like countries. So, we need to flip to the physical map of the world, which is on R6 and R7. Now, if you forgot the shape and location of the place we found, you can always flip back. Or you can use the latitude and longitude lines here. Okay, so you could come on this map and do the 20 north and the 40 east and put your fingers together. And when you put your fingers together, you end in this body of water. And according to this map, it is the Red Sea. And you can see it's right there. You see the Nile River running over here. Got the Arabian Peninsula over here, Mediterranean Sea over here. You look at the shape of it, it's kind of skinny. By Africa. We come over here, we see the same shape. Okay, here's that Mediterranean Sea. Okay, here's Africa. Here's that skinny piece between it and the Arabian Peninsula, otherwise the large part of the Arabian Peninsula called Saudi Arabia. Henceforth its name. So it's right there. So the answer is Red Sea with a capital R on red and a capital S on sea because it is a proper noun. Because you can do major bodies of water or countries for these. Alright. Okay, just a few things to note. Remember that you don't have to have the degree sign on these because sometimes it's hard for me to distinguish between a degree sign and a 0. Capitalize proper nouns. Put your fingers together carefully when you get ready to put your latitude and longitude lines together. If you are below this dotted line and it's water, we're going to call that the Southern Ocean. Okay, so you can kind of like down here. And anything above this Arctic Circle, which is this dotted line up here. I don't know if you guys can see that dotted line right there. Okay, that is the Arctic Circle. And anything above that's going to be the Arctic Ocean. Now the oceans kind of run together because really it's one giant ocean, and we just lump together certain sections and give them different ocean names. But you can see all the ocean is one big thing. It's all connected. Okay, you could come from this side of the world clear to this side of the world, going through different what we call oceans. And so there's not really a specific cutoff. Like you're going to have the Indian Ocean running into the Southern Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. There's not a place exactly where we cut that off at. So that will just give us some points to kind of figure out like, hey, we'll just call that the Southern Ocean. We'll just call anything above this dotted line the Arctic Ocean. Okay? Alright, please let me know if you have any questions or if you are struggling on absolute location. ahead and flip to the back of your book to R15. This is the Europe political map, and I wanted to look at latitude lines for a bit. So you might notice that this is not a world map, it's just zooming in to a continent called Europe. Is there a blue line on this large map that shows you the equator? Well, there's no big line that shows you the equator. You can tell where the equator is on this locator map. It's this line right here, this latitude line. But there's nothing here, and that's because Europe sets well above the equator. So you would just have to know that you're in the northern hemisphere, or in this case it does give you the ends, which is really handy. And it does give you a locator map to kind of help you too, but on a lot of maps they're not going to do that. They won't have the ends, they won't have the locator map. So you have to know that Europe is above the equator, and you'll know that all those latitude lines within Europe are going to be marked with an N after the number. Please let me know if you have any questions about what I've just talked about. Okay, flip to your world atlas to R19, and we're going to look at an Africa political map. And we're not worried about the physical map, just the political map. I want you to think about where the longitude line called the prime meridian would be on this political map of Africa. Okay, hopefully you paused the video and you thought about that. So, it will not be right in the middle. Okay, this is different. It's not a world map, it's a zoomed in map. Now, if you scroll down here to the bottom, you can see a 0. Remember that the prime meridian is marked with a 0, or it should be. That is its number. And so this is where the prime meridian is. So in fact, everything from this side over is going to be the western hemisphere. So just kind of like this tip here is going to be in the western hemisphere. The larger chunk of Africa is going to be in the eastern hemisphere. So everything from here over is going to be in the eastern hemisphere. So be careful, because on some maps you will have the prime meridian be kind of on the side. In other maps it'll be in the middle, and on other maps it may not even show up because it might be really, really far away from the center of the Earth. Flip to R13 in your world atlas. Where is the prime meridian? Where is that longitude line at? Okay, hopefully you paused and you thought about it. It's not located on this map, and that's because South America is too far away from the prime meridian to have it show up on this map of just South America. It's too zoomed in, if you will. It's too up close and personal. So it's off the map. You can also tell that by looking at the numbers at the bottom. Remember, the closer you are to the prime meridian, the smaller the numbers. So we have 60, you're counting by 10s this time, not 20s. 50, 40, 30, 20, so we know that somewhere over here would be 10, and then somewhere over here would be 0. So this would definitely make you have to think, which hemisphere is this in? I can't just guess this. I kind of have to know. So if you look down here at your locator map, which you're lucky to have, you can see, okay, well, there's South America. That's what I'm looking at. And I know that England is right up here. Okay, this is the Western Hemisphere. And of course, this map does give you the W's. And of course, you do know the closer you get to the prime meridian, the littler numbers get. So you kind of have to think it out a little bit whenever you get to a map that is zoomed in.